Hey guys, we just did an amazing interview with Shelby.
Yep, Shelby Leigh. She has a course on being trauma informed and trauma aware. And it's incredible stuff. We're so excited. It was the first interview that we're doing, and we're so excited to bring you this wonderful information.
So if you want to know the ins and outs of trauma informed care and what that means and how our professions need to kind of come up to speed with this kind of stuff, or just the beginnings of looking at what trauma is, this is a great introductory conversation.
Yes, and it's good for all types of relationships, whether it's business or personal relationships, to understand what it is to be trauma aware.
All right.
Enjoy. All right. Welcome to This Modern Mystic. We're so happy to have you and that you agreed to do this with us. We want to welcome Shelby Leigh. She is an LPC. She has a course called Creating Safer Space. It's a trauma-informed and trauma specialist with over 15 years of experience supporting people with complex developmental trauma in a holistic, non-pathological way. Does that sound about right?
I love that.
I wanted to mention that you have Transforming Touch practitioner, and you trademarked that, so that's your...
It's not my trademark. It's my mentor's trademark.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's his methodology, Transforming Touch.
Nice. So you incorporate touch into your work.
I do, and if I can't see people in person, then we do it intentionally.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Kind of energy sending it, right?
Ish,
yeah.
We'll get into that.
And then you're a licensed somatic psychotherapist, and you've been twice certified coach. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then there's some things, especially for some of our listeners, that we'd love to unpack there. So they have a better understanding, and I have a better understanding of what it all means too.
That sounds great.
All right. Did you want to add anything?
No, we can just dive in.
All right. So let's talk about I think a lot of people understand or have heard about trauma, but not as much as being trauma informed. And I think that's a big interest for a lot of people. What does that mean, and what does it encompass? And how do you become trauma informed?
Cool. Yes. So when we're trauma informed, it goes beyond just being aware that trauma exists. It includes the knowledge that trauma exists, which a lot of people don't even think about as healers, therapists, coaches, facilitators, counselors. And when we're trauma informed, we're going that extra step to make sure that we're not re-traumatizing, re-harming, and doing a whole bunch of things in ourselves, in our own nervous systems, in our spaces, in the way that we're connecting with the people we work with, to help them feel safe enough to be themselves, to bring every part of themselves. And there are specific ways we can do that so that we're not causing additional stress or harm to an already stressed nervous system.
Yeah, and I noticed in there you said something about knowing your own, like it's knowing yourself too, right?
That's where it starts. It has to start with us being centered, being grounded, being aware of how we carry our own trauma and able to tend to that in every moment. Because when folks show up with their trauma, our stuff comes up too.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have to know what we're working with.
I feel like that's something that we are not taught in school. That's not covered when you're training as a therapist. It's not something that they even introduce as a thing. So the fact that you're like, first we have to see how we're showing up and how it's affecting us. That's such pivotal, because so many people in the helping world have their own trauma and then get burnt out because they don't know what's going on until it's too late, and then they just have to like quit or leave the field or whatever, or just suffer through it because they don't know what else to do.
Exactly. I mean, the amount of people that I have worked with that end up just quitting.
Yeah.
Because of the structures they've been put in. Like, for example, I've worked with so many intern therapists who have come to me as their therapist. And they cannot navigate the system because it's not trauma informed for the clinicians, and they get burnt out.
Yeah.
And then to add on to that, they're seeing 20, 30 clients a week, a day. I mean, I've seen some crazy numbers that they're not taught how to hold space in a trauma-informed way, and so they're getting vicariously re-traumatized in their sessions.
Absolutely.
And no, I did not learn that in grad school. I had to go to
right?
so many additional trainings, which is insane because I was a coach and I wanted to go to grad school to learn more about trauma.
That's
And then
cool.
it wasn't there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not part of the usual. Because the thing is, it seems like they give like the lowest, the introductory jobs are all the very inundated in the crisis work, the SPMI, this persistent mental illness. Those type of jobs, the hardest jobs, go to the least trained people. And it should be the other way around, right? That the people with their licenses and years of experience are the ones doing the most trauma inundated jobs.
Totally. But the cool thing about Become Trauma Informed is that it actually puts us past a lot of the experts that have been in the field for decades who know how to work with trauma, but they still aren't being trauma informed.
Sure.
And there's a big difference. Just because someone knows how to work with trauma or teach about trauma doesn't know that, and they don't know how to be trauma informed. And so if we have that added layer, which is actually a much shorter training, it simplifies everybody's lives. The people that are working, the people that are coming to us, and it just creates so much more space for us to be human.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I'd like to say from the perspective of being on the other side, being the client on that, I think there's especially when there's so many people that need help, when you're in like a treatment center kind of treatment center facility or environment, and there's so many people going to see only a few people, and you don't get the time that you need to speak to anybody. And then in the moment of when they are speaking, it's so quick and so almost at times it's very methodical, and we can feel that as clients. And so I think that it's a very admirable thing that people are willing to take this trauma-informed type of training.
Absolutely.
It's very much needed.
It really gives space. It gives a pause to everything that's happening. Because of course we want to come in and do as much as we can and help people as fast as we can.
Yeah.
But that's actually us in a trauma response. On various levels. Like, I want to be perceived as helpful. I don't want to sit with discomfort.
Yeah.
And so when we're trauma informed, we're not alarmed.
Yeah.
We have space to be with the suffering that's there, the pain that's there.
Yeah.
We can slow down, we can be together, instead of just cranking out a whole bunch of group activities and processes and getting people to just pour out their trauma as fast as possible.
Yeah.
It's actually counterproductive.
Yeah.
But when we're trauma informed, we get to do less and give more.
Good. And so do you think this is something that like, is it better, like the group settings, does it make a difference then? Like, if you're trying to be trauma-informed in group settings, or if you have one-on-one, or you have a set amount of time, or you have a flexible amount of time in order to do it, because the way that it's set up right now, it seems to be that, you only have such a short period of time in these institutions to do anything. So is that really a place for people to get help,
Hell yeah. I think that we can help in a million ways, and it's how we set it up that matters.
Yeah.
So when I'm trauma informed and I know I have a teeny tiny bit of time with someone, I'll take 2 minutes on the front end to orient someone to the amount of time we have, what our maybe one goal is instead of 70.
Yeah.
Get their consent, see if they're on board and want to collaborate with that mission.
Yeah.
If it's a group, I would do that with the whole group.
Yeah.
And then we dive in.
Yeah,
but if we miss consent, and if we miss orienting people to where we're headed, what we're up to here, people's nervous systems are taking so much time to just figuring out why we're here in the same room together, and what are you going to ask me to do?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I get that.
Yeah.
Trying to collab together.
Yeah.
And if you're not on the same space, then you're not going to get any work done anyway.
No way. If you don't have consent, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Okay. So when was the first time that you in your life were kind of like, hey, I think life is more spiritual, or my work is somewhat tied to spiritualness? When did that first kind of pop in your head or kind of click?
I, for a while in my early 20s, called myself an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty pissed off at God. I was raised Christian and had a lot of things I was told I was supposed to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have a relationship to God that made sense to me.
Sure.
And so I kind of checked out of the spirituality world for a while.
Yeah.
And then I was severely anxious and depressed. I was heavily using drugs and alcohol. I was really suffering and suicidal in my early 20s. And I happened to be in my house right down the street here in just south of Bend, Oregon. And I was reading the continuing education catalog. And it said something about Buddhism. And it was like, come learn about how to work with your anxiety and mindfulness. And I was like, I'll try anything. It was free.
Nice.
And I went to this amazing little temple upstairs in the sacred community center or something, some church.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this gorgeous Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhist temple, tiny. It was filled with like 20 people, just
Nice.
wall to wall, maybe 25. And it was the first time somebody had been talking about spirituality that I wasn't like all like, you know, don't tell me what to believe. And he talked about how this was like freely offered, take what you want, leave the rest,
Right.
get
No
it from your
pressure.
own direct experience, and that life is suffering. And I had always been told that life was supposed to be great and joyful and perfect and happy, and all I felt was suffering.
Yeah.
And so nothing lined up. And when I heard that the Buddha's first noble truth was that life is suffering,
Yeah.
I was like, yep, that dude. He knew what it was about. And then he has a path, you know, to come out of suffering.
Yeah.
Or to relate to the suffering in a new way.
Yeah.
And I was sold from that first class. I ended up studying both Tibetan Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism for, now it's been over 20 years.
Yeah.
But I was in my early 20s and I just started teaching it. I started offering free classes,
Nice.
meditation classes at Drake Park and any free room that a church would give me, or
Oh, nice.
a yoga studio.
Yeah.
And people started showing up. And
So it's
people-
huge. Yeah.
People wanted that.
Yeah.
And in the flavor that I was offering it, I was so passionate.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is I kind of veered off the path because I wanted that to be my career. You know, I wanted that my whole livelihood to be based on sharing the Dharma. But my Dharma teachers were like, "You're too young.
Yeah.
You should go to school and be a therapist." So I first went to be a coach. I tried to take the shortcut and impress them, and then they were like, "Go to be a therapist." And now, 20 years later, a lot of my focus is turning back towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the core. I resonate with you being raised very Christian and then not ever feeling that, you know, they said, if you know God, you'll feel God. And I never felt it. And I always felt disconnected. And then it took me all these years to find the spirituality, like you said, listening to Buddhist monks and different yogis, and for me to really, because they said it's within, like the real thing, and it empowered me. But segueing into this other question, but I'll wait on that one just a little bit longer. But it took learning this other way of being, the spiritual aspect of being, and understand what it is to be a human being, for me to change. So I just wanted to say I really resonate with what you're saying there. Yeah.
Everything I do is about how can we be human? How can we be whole?
Yeah.
How can we be in relationship to ourselves and others in a way that we honor all of the different ways that we each are guided and supported. And like my spirituality doesn't have to be the same as your spirituality. Yeah. But it's really helpful when we're tapped into something that feels like we're co-creating with. Yeah. For me, I mean, Buddhism is a great structure and path and belief system. Mm-hmm. But where I feel most present, connected, and supported is in nature. Like my relationship to God is in nature. You know, like that's where I'm like, I trust you. You know, I can hear you. And I imagine as I continue to heal and grow, that will only get louder.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But whatever my direct experience is, it's going to be totally different than yours.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I love that. I love that there can be many.
And I think we need it too, because the people that are going to listen to you and understand you, they are going to look different. They came from different places, you know, and I think it's very important that people understand that. And being trauma informed, that's why it's important to be trauma informed, because everybody comes from different pathways, and there's different, you know, traumas that affect them, you know, in different ways too. And sometimes the same trauma affects people in different ways. So it's it's vitally important to understand that.
It can't be a one-size-fits-all experience. And so if I'm meeting you human to human, I can be in my curiosity instead of, he has PTSD. Let's treat him like this. He is in treatment. Let's do this. It's like, let me just be here with you human to human and find out what's actually resourcing, supportive for you, what's aligned with your values, instead of something, all my stuff. I'm not going to put that on you.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
And they do say that in our psych training to be therapists, is that the placebo effect of just the therapeutic relationship is the most important thing. It's not someone's modality or whatever techniques they try to use. It really is the human connection.
Yes.
And we forget that because we think that, this, you know, we want to, like you said, help, but that's egoic. It's reaching for something that we shouldn't be reaching for. So like, just how do we settle in and be human together and in this moment?
Yeah, and from that place, then we can use our tools, right? But we have to start connected. We have to start human to human. And then maybe we pull in a tool or an intervention or have a piece of advice. I don't know. I'm really big on not giving advice personally because it backfires often. I'd rather have my people's wisdom be what guides them. But when I'm in my presence and when we're connected as humans, it's so much easier to hear like what the thing to offer is. Right?
How do you teach people? Because I know when people are really learning they're really starting at the basics of understanding that they even have trauma. A lot of times we confuse our inner voice as it's actually the trauma voice, right? So like instead of our intuition has been silenced for so long, it's confused because it listens to other people more than ourselves. We don't even know how to connect to ourselves because we're scared of what it feels like to be in our body. So then we get confused. So how does someone, when they're in the beginning stages, really connect to their deeper wisdom and their actual wisdom, not the trauma that's been embedded in them? You know?
Oh, it's such a good question, and it's just, I want to underline what you're saying of like, but the question of how do we start like connecting with the most wise voice instead of the voices that are the trauma voices. Curiosity. Most of us who've experienced a lot of trauma, the voices that are really intense and black and white and all or nothing, those are the ones I start going, okay, so let's just look at those as parts of ourselves. Are there any that are maybe a little bit more at ease, a little bit more peaceful, a little more spacious, And for someone that might be terrifying to even tap into because they survived with the intense voices, the intense parts, I'll say. But my sense is that the slower, quieter, more gentle parts are those wiser parts. What do you think?
No, that's good.
I think that was beautiful, actually. Like, I've never really thought about that. And what's interesting about that is we teach, like, the science of spirituality. So then when that's happening, right, where those intense voices, it is that flight, fight, or freeze state of being. And then really you want to operate from love, right? Hopefully. And try to figure out what that really feels like. And so if you're in that flight, fight, or freeze, you're really not making decisions based on growth. You're making it on survival, right?
Right. And the most important thing is to not be too hard on ourselves when we don't know, when we can't hear, when we can't tell which one is which.
Yeah.
It's like being curious and staying open and just listening. Oh, what would love say right now? Like, I don't need to have the right answer after I ask that. What might love say? And then, like, over time, you start getting repetition.
Yeah. I gotta say, I was very insecure when I started to go down this path of using my emotions and spirituality as a guidance system. It was a lot easier for me to, because I knew I already knew how to do it. Go off of these, I don't know, heuristics or
Analytical mind.
Yeah, automatic responses. You know how people are going to act. So then you act a certain way because you know they're going to act a certain way. And so it's a lot more comfortable doing it that way. So I think it also takes some courage too, as well as curiosity. 2 C's, courage and curiosity.
Yeah. Thinking, as a somatic practitioner, I think the first one feels more rigid to me.
Yeah.
And the second one feels like a little more receptive or soft, which if we're thinking in terms of survival, rigid would be the program.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah.
Soft takes a lot of courage, open-hearted, present, receptive.
Speaking of somatic, could you maybe tell everybody a little bit about what that is and why you feel that's important?
Yes. Somatic is that our bodies are connected to our minds. They're not separate. Yeah. And then we can't just process out all that's happened to us, all that we've been through, by talking about it. Yeah. In fact, when we do that, our bodies are re-experiencing it as though it's happening right now. Yeah. And so why would we want to tell the stories of our trauma again and again in a sequential thing? Because that means we're back in it. Yeah. Somatic is a lot more gentle. And a lot more effective because we're not reliving it again and again and propelling ourselves into a survival response. When we go at the pace of our body, it tends to be much slower. And so we don't re-traumatize ourselves as we're processing. We go, oh, how is it when my solar plexus is totally locked down because I'm in a power struggle with my partner and it's bringing up the past experience of being helpless and okay, so let's just stay with the solar plexus instead of the last 40 years of pain. And from that place, as we're connected, so much wisdom arises, so much of that past stuff. But because we're moving at the pace of the body, we don't go into that overwhelm of all of the past pictures and emotions and experiences too much too fast. We don't go over
building
the
the story, bigger from there.
We need to tell our stories often to survive, but not in that kind of checked out of our body. We can't feel we're actually in the past as we're talking. When we have access to our resource, like our feet on the ground, I can feel you here with me. I can say a little bit about my past, and then I can feel my breath. Something healing can happen because I'm actually building a new relationship to it with all of the resources that are here, and my body is a resource. So.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful because what else were we doing? Fascia?
Yeah,
we're looking into learning about the fascia release, and I don't think I think now it's becoming more known how much your body holds that energy, and people don't realize. And I agree with you. I think a lot of people agree with you that talking about it. I mean, maybe it's my masculine, but man, why are we always talking about it? What can we do? What do we do though? I get it. Yes, that happened. But what do we do about it? You know what I mean?
And I'm always, how can we be with it?
That's great.
Yeah. And the fascia, some people say fascia, I say fascia, others say fascia.
Yeah.
That's the connective tissue that it's a one piece of cellular structure that connects our entire body. And it holds, our postures, how we experience the past, how we experience our confidence.
Oh,
all
yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
And if we can support the fascia to connect and communicate with our nervous system, the ways we hold ourselves in a new way, so much is possible.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's what we work a little bit with fascia in the transforming touch modality.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering about that. I was going to ask you that when I first met you. If you were into that. Yeah. Did you have any?
So do you teach? So when you're in a session and someone's like, they're getting overwhelmed, you just bring them back to their body?
Well, I bring them back to whatever feels resourcing for them. So resourcing is anything that feels supportive, soothing, comforting. Many of us who've experienced trauma, our bodies do not feel safe.
Yeah.
We work towards building safety in our bodies over time. That's part of somatic work. But we never start with the assumption of this person, as soon as we get them in their body, they'll feel safe. We have to just go very slowly. We check out of our bodies for a really good reason when we're experiencing significant, overwhelming events. So we can use a lot of things as resource. You're a resource for me. You're a resource. We can use our connection that you feel safe to be in connection with. I can be more myself here. The river outside is a resource. This wild dog is a resource. Sometimes a nice route in towards the body is like a hand to heart. Oh yeah, actually that does feel all right. And so when people get overwhelmed, we just take a pause. Can you feel me here with you? What do you see around? Name 3 things. Yeah, and preferably they're not things that are driving them crazy, like piles of laundry. And so we do, that's called titration, where we do a little bit at a time. Titration is a chemical experience that alchemists use. They put 1 drop into their potion.
Nice. See what happens.
Yeah, see what happens. Put another drop, put another drop. And so when we work with the body and trauma healing, we just go a little bit at a time. Can we be present with this piece of your past? Okay. All right, we're here. How about this one? And so we're like gathering, we're welcoming, we're embracing it all. But it's slow enough that we can be here with it.
That reminds me of Tony Robbins. I don't know if people like him, but he was talking about like when people are, somebody would be afraid of a spider or something like that, and they have it way over here, and he brings it just a little bit closer, and a little bit closer. And I don't know how well that actually works, but it kind of seems like
very well.
Yeah, it does, huh?
So I'm a neurolinguistic programming practitioner. That was my original training. That's what he does and has made famous. I'm not a big fan of him because he does a lot of shaming of people, and he's not trauma informed at all. A lot of people.
He's old school though, right? Like super old school. Yeah.
A lot of people have felt very helped by him though, and different modalities for different people. Everyone has something important to offer. So.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I did want to ask. Let's see. Look at that.
11. Yeah. Talked about when you first felt connected to some kind of spirituality, but what does it mean for you to actually be that spiritual being, like throughout your day or throughout your life? What do you prioritize? What's important to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what comes up when you ask that question. I'm like, can I call myself a spiritual being?
Oh, funny.
Oh, that sounds pretentious. But I love it. I love when stuff comes up. To me, being in my spiritual practice is an act of revolution. You know, it's going against the stream of what so many people out there are doing in the day-to-day hustle, not listening, not slowing down enough to really, am I aligned with my North Star? Am I aligned with helping the world in the way that is my Dharma? To me, it's choosing a week off every month over that potential extra income. So that I can be healthy in my body. I was chronically ill for 20 years. So that I can be actually deeply present with my clients in the biggest way I know how. So that I can teach from integrity. So I'm walking my walk. But more than anything, so that I can be with the earth, like Mother Nature. My biggest hope is that whatever I leave, it helps her, you know? And I can't do it if I'm not slowing down. I love going fast. My birthday 2 years ago, what I did, I drove my Audi 120 miles an hour. Like,
Nice.
I love going fast, but when
Nice.
we're healed,
Yeah.
we have range. And so I need to spend as much time slow as I do fast. And so that's me in my spiritual being. It is my activism. Like, to be able to unplug from the messages we get every single day, that we are not enough, we need to do more, be more, success looks like this, friendships look like that, family looks like this, partnership, whatever. And to go, what is my path? And it doesn't look much like most people I know.
Yeah. But it's funny though that when we're not living from a place that you are of spaciousness and wellness and connection, your body will shut you down and make you slow down and connect at some point, right? So our body is always intelligent, and what I try to tell people is symptoms are a good thing. Symptoms are your body telling you that some data, it's telling you, hey, maybe we need to pay attention to this, or we need more time doing this, like, let's slow down. And when you're forced to slow down, it doesn't feel so great because you're not making the choice. But how do we, and we talk about this a lot too, how do we make decisions ahead of time before it gets to a crisis point, and then we want to do something about it, right? Like, so that's an interesting phenomenon.
The 3 weeks off, 1 or 2 off came out of that. It was like my nervous system, the way my brain works, I'm not healthy doing the 40-hour a week thing.
Yeah.
I need to have a different rhythm in order to be well, right? And well-being comes in so many forms. And so it came out of massive illness and overwhelm.
Yeah, then that brings me to, you mentioned something about high vibe. I was hoping that maybe you dive into that just a little bit, give people a little taste of.
I just love being contrary. There's so many people who high vibe works for. It makes sense for them. But I think my activism is around folks who've been through trauma, see people who are healed, who are high vibe all the time, and they're going, how far is it going to take for me to get there?
Yeah.
Like, if that's what healing looks like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
I can't. Like, I don't feel joy, I don't feel play, I don't feel hope, I'm not successful, whatever high vibe is. And to me, it feels like this Instagram high pressure ideal of healing. That's this box. Like, if we're high vibe, that means we're spiritual, we're evolved, we're successful, we're empowered. And I think that healing takes on a lot of different forms.
Yeah.
But it also comes from majorly fearing toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Which was my mother. It's like, no emotions are okay unless it's, thank you so much for whatever that is. I'm so happy you gave it to me, and I just am nice all the time, and I'm happy. And so when I see high vibe people, I don't trust it. I'm like, give me the spectrum. Where every human suffers. I don't care how evolved you are.
Yeah.
I want to see that too.
Yeah.
And so it just makes me nervous. But also, if you are feeling high vibe, that's great too.
Yeah.
That's a piece of my own healing I'm doing.
Yeah.
No, I think what you're touching on too is that it's not sustainable just to be in that part of life or experiencing life all the time. Like, that's not realistic, and there's this expectation, and you know, what is it, the woke society or whatever, they're spinning spirituality in a negative way, in this unrealistic form, that it's actually not, it's more disconnected from your humanity than it is, than what it's supposed to, like, it disconnects you further, actually, because you have to feel your emotions. You have to see that, like, life still, everyone still is going through a journey, and that journey isn't always, like, the mountaintop. We have the valleys, and we have, you know, you
The
roll
climb.
your ankle every once in a while, whatever it is, right? Like, we're not always at the mountaintop, and that's not realistic.
Yeah, you know, when I'm like scrolling through, I was on a dating app at one point, and scrolling through it, anybody that's like, must be positive, or like high vibe, I'm like, nope, because it scares me that as a deep feeler, that if I'm grieving or I'm angry, that I won't be safe with that person. It won't be welcome.
Absolutely.
So.
I hear that.
Yeah, and I grew up in
sharing
the
it.
whole, like, motivational. Well, not grew up. This is what I sought out, because I was trying to always motivate myself to be better, a better human being, or whatever, more accomplished, I should say, in different ways, and in the box that you talk about, you know, because you're taught that that's what you're supposed to do, and a lot of it is that, like, high vibes. You gotta go for it. You can't give up. You gotta. And then what I'm starting to realize is that when you talk about being in nature, and we're natural, like, people don't realize that we're a natural part, you know, and we're part of life, or source, or the all, whatever you want to call it, God, and there's a balance. There's negative and positive, you know. There's up and down. So if you're always on one side of the polarity, it's not really going to work. The pendulum swings going to bring you back, and then when it does all the way, and if you haven't really gotten in touch with your shadow side or any of that, and then when that stuff hits you, then the trauma that you thought you fixed gets inflamed real quick, you know, because you're not in tune with it, who you are really.
Yeah, I think performing high vibe is different than when it's a naturally occurring experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people, especially on Instagram, performing high vibe, saying this is what healing and enlightenment looks like. And so I just want to be mindful that high vibe is great. Like, if you're resonating at that frequency and it feels really genuine and authentic for you, beautiful. But I don't think it's an ideal we need to hold ourselves to in order to heal. And I mean, somebody like my mom, you know, that was her coping strategy for her trauma response. Like, just be high vibe all the time, then nobody can get to you, right? And it's like, we need to keep an eye on that. More permission for the full experience of our humanity.
Yeah. Especially with building a business, you know, and you're going to work and you're like, oh, I gotta be high vibe about it. So you put in positive energy. And really, when you probably shouldn't work, because you're not really feeling it right now. So why am I trying to high vibe myself to get this done?
Well, and part of that is that we live in a capitalistic society where we're measured by performance. We have to perform by showing up from a 9 to 5. You have to be productive throughout. You know, you can't. A lot of that structure is, not, like you said before, rigid, right? So we don't have the capacity to be human inside that structure. And so if you're going to survive in that, you have to force yourself. And then people are drinking, you know, 5 espresso shot coffees, and I'm like, that's even a thing?
In between their
Like,
monsters.
Yeah. And it's just, it breaks my heart, honestly, to see people feel that they need to live like that. And I think that's why we're all so passionate about this, is because we want people to know that there's a different way to live.
Yeah, and you know, I was entrepreneurship is the long game, right?
Yeah.
Like, do not become an entrepreneur if you're not in for the ups and downs
Yeah.
and the hard nights and whatever. But there's a different way to do it, and sometimes I do hustle. Sometimes I'm like, all right, we got to get this retreat out. I'm exhausted, and I'm in relationship to my business where and my money where I need to care for it, and that means I'm staying up that extra hour. But it's a different intention. And then I also know I've got that week off, and so I've built in already nourishment.
Nice.
If I have to push it, that I'm not going to just push, burn. I will have rest. And we have to be able to weather those ups and downs, and we need community around it, and also to not show each other that we're just high vibe all the time. It's a real journey.
When you first said that, I was kind of like, gotta be high vibe. But I actually do understand where you're coming from with it, you know.
Totally.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and just, also, when we do it that different way, for me, when I'm going a million miles an hour and my income is like, something's not on, and I'm like, I don't care, I'm still taking that week off, even though things feel tight. It always brings in more income than if I kept hustling. Because when I slow down, I'm like, 50 things come off the to-do list that weren't even important, that I was just hamster wheeling. And then the 10 most important things that are totally aligned are like, go. It's like just you're ready, you've got the energy, you're inspired, and it's supported.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think people should pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And then I've heard that, like, a lot of our memories, what we remember isn't even accurate. You know, that, and it's also influenceable. And so when people give information, then all of a sudden our memory changes to accommodate whatever people say. And then whatever story we tell ourselves based on that. So then when I think about that, and then I think about trauma, how much of our trauma is actually real?
Such a good question.
Yeah.
I want to say all of it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud. I think our stories evolve and change and shift for sure. But it still doesn't make it any less real. Because we're grappling with it, we're feeling into it. It's not like the trauma happened then and then it stopped. It's also the aftermath. And often, actually, it's more the aftermath. And as we're trying to make sense of it through the stories we tell ourselves, we're in relationship to it, and I think it's still real. Something, so many of us are so impressionable when people have thoughts about the stories we're telling ourselves, or we get invalidated, or we get affirmed, or someone does hypnosis with us and tells us things happened that didn't. Like, we are very impressionable beings, so we have to have impeccable boundaries with who we share with, so that the story so we can be in relationship to it in a way that's healing and meaningful for us, and we don't always get that. I would say more than anything, our bodies have the stories. So accurate. And so if we're ever wondering, did that happen? Did it not? I know it changed. Like, I used to tell myself this, and now it's like this, and that certainly has happened for me as I've healed. Like, I went through a whole thing of, actually, I think the story, I made it worse out loud because nobody was fucking listening to me.
Yeah.
Nobody was validating what happened, and so I had to make it bigger, even though it was, like, in retrospect, the story I was originally telling was horrific. But then I had to, like, in my mind, make it even more scary. Yeah. Because everybody was like, that didn't happen. You're being dramatic. Just be positive. So that's still trauma. The trauma is still happening.
And then it builds because of the invalidation of what's going on. Like, you almost feel like you're crazy or something. Yeah. And now, as for me, as I integrate more of it, I can barely remember it. Yeah. I'm like, what happened? Like, and I know it, but if I need to know, I know it. Yeah. It's here. Yeah. But it doesn't
take over my mind in the middle of the night anymore. It's a dance. We're dancing. And I don't think it's ever inaccurate or not real because trauma is the relationship we're in to the event and what happened. And so, of course it's shifting. We're human. We're always shifting and changing.
Yeah, and I remember, Sadhguru? Oh, no, huh?
No.
He was saying that one of the best things that you can teach your kids is how to let go. Instead of holding on to
have
things.
what does he call it? It's like to have flexibility, to like have like a bounce back kind of like process, but then get back to their functioning state, so or whatever. So
like
they're
buoyancy.
safe. Like okay, safe space, but that takes also the parents and the community being able to validate, oh yeah, that happened, I'm so sorry, and we're here for you, and you're holding them while they're crying, and you're doing all those things, and then that's what helps them bounce back. It's not actually them being, it's us supporting them in their nervous system, like you talk about. And
You're not saying get over it.
Not invalidating. There was a study done with Vietnam veterans in Vietnam versus Vietnam veterans in the United States. The percentage of vets with PTSD in the United States was high, like goosebumps high. Horrible, like horrific. In Vietnam, almost nothing. And the difference was that they were welcomed home. They were validated. They were appreciated for their fight. They were looked in the eyes and said, I see you, I'm here with you, I got you, by their communities, their villages. In the United States, we shunned them.
Shunned them for doing it.
We ignored them. They had injuries, we didn't look at them. We didn't have support. And that PTSD came from that, not the event. So
that's amazing.
And there's so many examples in cultures where that's the American way is to pretend like it's not happening. I mean, even our history is like not accurate that we're teaching about, to our kids about what's been done. So it's unfortunate, but we can, once we like as people can hold more space, then we can recognize more of maybe the historical things and that we can pay witness to.
I think that's important. And then I just have one more. We got time? All right. I want to respect your time.
It's Luna's time. She has to go to
bed. She needs that, huh? All right, so this one is being a woman in a field whose foundation, rules, and methodology was built by Caucasian males. Does your education ever come in conflict with your own ideals or inner guidance as to how things should be approached?
Yes. That's a huge question. I am constantly talking about like how do we break out of these patriarchal paradigms. Patriarchy impacts everyone of all genders. Right? How are we working within a system and educated within a system, and then the licensure system that is built on oppression instead of empowerment, especially as women. I feel like I'm working against it every day, and like my health was a model of what's it like to be working under these ideals, these values, this whole system created out of it. That's like the insurance companies, everything that keeps therapists broke, which is so too much. In terms of like Freud or Jung or those teachings, I didn't really pay much attention to them in school, honestly.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like zero. So I've always kind of just been a little bit of a rebel. Like, I do think everyone has something brilliant to offer, and I think that I'm grateful to have been offered such an alternative education. I went to California Institute of Integral Studies. We were offered a lot of different ways of thinking about somatic psychology, and so truthfully, I didn't spend much time with those philosophies. And I think more than anything, it's the structures of how we work that come from the white male historical attitude in the United States that I try to break free from every day.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Well spoken.
Yeah, I like that because even it's really a big foundation of I think about like therapeutic things and even from a cultural basis, you know, like different cultures see things in a different way, you know, and I feel like, and maybe this is my patriarch views, honestly, I'm putting that into consideration, that your field is such a nurturing field, and to have like men who have more of the logical methodology type of thinking, you know, where it's a lot more logic in mind than it is heart. Like it should be way more nurture based, but that's maybe
I learned a lot of my teachers were women.
Yeah.
And I got that. And the other thing is, you know, I've swum in this water since I was born.
Yeah. You didn't have a choice.
So it's not something I've thought about because I'm used to the water. You know, I'm used to learning from mostly white male textbooks.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is the first you're bringing to me, and I'm like, if I really dug into it, I'd have a better answer.
Yeah.
But it is truly the water I have swum in since I'm born.
Yeah.
I was born.
Yeah. I think we all.
Yeah, all of us, right? And it's not. It's all. I also just. When I say fuck the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Like, I love men.
Yeah.
I love men. I've been thinking so much lately about all the good, beautiful men that I know, and I'm so lucky to know so many doing their healing work.
Yeah.
And so when I'm like, fuck the patriarchy or those white men, like I really believe that so many people are well intentioned.
Yeah.
And there's a spectrum. A lot have caused significant harm that needs massive reparation.
Yeah.
However, I also just want to not perpetuate. I don't want to dehumanize men as a whole.
Yeah. And we men
or white
appreciate
men
that.
as a whole, you know.
Yeah,
I'm sure they appreciate that.
I always see it as the same two sides of the same coin. You know, feminism versus patriarchy, whatever. It's really not versus, but we've been framed to think that. But you know, trauma does damage to men, and it does damage to women. And the way that we process and then we're affected by those traumas, or the cultural expectations of us and how that's been perpetuated has been different for each gender. But it's not one person's fault versus the other. We are coming into an age where we need to learn to join together against the institutions or traumas that are happening and say, you know what, you can't divide us anymore.
Wow, we know you loved it. It was awesome stuff. We didn't even have enough time to pack it all in that small amount of time. That's why we're doing this outro, to let you know that we do plan on having her on again so we can get more in depth.
Yes. So if there's anything that really touched your heart, that touched your mind, and you're like, oh, that was the perfect takeaway, comment it below so that we know what really resonated with you guys, and then we can talk about those things the next time as well. Or if you have questions that you want clarified, we can do that too.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.